What's going on, guys, and welcome to today's video. Now today we are finally going to pay some attention to the Ninja. Now this thing sat for over a season while we were building the new garage in the rental house, shoved over in the corner of the garage. Wasn't really able to ride it the whole season because it was so buried and so inconvenient. So we're finally going to change some oil on it. And I figured while I was changing the oil, we would kind of have a little story on how this bike came to be. So now that we got the oil draining, this was my second motorcycle that I had. I originally had a 2013 Kawasaki Ninja 300. And bought the bike brand new and put about 20,000 miles on that 300. Rode it on the track, rode it at the drag strip. I toured with it to Texas. I drove that thing daily through winters. I dailied the heck out of that bike. Now, I had about 20,000 miles on that 300 and put it down just barely of really light low side at the racetrack. Wasn't hurt, wasn't bad. Needed to replace a few little fairings on the side, but I decided at that time for track use, I thought I needed to upgrade to get all the controls up higher to get a little better lean angle on track. So I put the 300 back together, I put the few little plastics that it needed on it, and sold the bike. And that's when I started looking for a 2013 through 2014 Ninja ZX6R, because those were the only 2 years that they made this really cool satin white color. And of course, like every other vehicle in the garage, it's gotta be white. So I looked and looked and looked, and almost every single bike that you find used is going to be modified, exhaust, flashy lights under it, lowered, just horrible things done to it, and you know it's been abused and jumped and wheelied and all of those things that you wouldn't want done to your own bike. Now I could have bought a brand new one, but I wanted the cool white paint color, so that left me searching for a 13 or 14. Now, after some time of searching, I came across a Craigslist ad for a 2013 Kawasaki Ninja with only 1,800 miles on it. Messaged the guy and ended up going out, taking a look at it, riding it, and finding out this bike originally came from Hawaii. The guy was a military guy. He was stationed over in Hawaii, and all of his buddies at that time had bikes, so he bought a bike and rode it that 1,800 miles or so over in Hawaii. Now when it was time for him to come back to the States, he obviously brought the bike with him and then put it in his garage, or basically it was a barn building on his property, and never touched it again. He told me the reason was it was too scary. He felt confident enough riding around with friends in Hawaii, but back home he said it was just too quick, too scary, and he didn't really want to ride it. So, like I said, it sat in his garage for how many years, I'm not sure, but it only had 1,800 miles on it, and I bought the bike, probably three or 4 years ago. So it was a very low mileage bike. Now, the big selling point, of course, was the white paint, but the fact it was unmodified, completely stock fender, stock exhaust, and you just do not find that on a motorcycle. That is unheard of, unseen, that does not happen. So I paid a decent amount of money. It was reasonable for the condition, the low mileage, and brought it home. Now the thing was still on original tires from 2013, and they were probably fine, but I did do a couple track days on them, and finally with daily driving, that rear tire finally wore out, so I was able to upgrade, put some fresh Q3 Plus tires on this thing. But that's kind of how I ended up owning a Hawaii Ninja here in the middle of Kansas, of all places. And I have kept the bike relatively stock, but done a few tasteful mods, I guess. I still would like to do the rear fender eliminator, of course, but haven't got around to that. But the exhaust, I like the look of the factory muffler. It goes well with all the angular lines on the bike, but I wanted more noise. So what I did, I removed the factory header, and on that factory header, on the kind of mid-pipe area, there is a small area that has the catalytic converter. I was able to cut a small incision in that pipe, open the pipe up, remove the cat, close it back up, have that welded shut, and now that is a catless header, and saved me a bunch of money over buying an exhaust. Now these do have a pre-muffler, which is this big, humongous, heavy contraption on the exhaust. There's a company that makes a pre-muffler delete pipe, so I was able to go ahead and throw a pre-muffler delete pipe on, which led me back to the factory muffler. Now, most of these super sports have a exhaust valve, which is an electronic controlled valve that opens and closes as you get in or out of throttle. Now, there's a bunch of debate on, does that hurt power, add power if you remove that valve? But I was in the search for more power, so I bought a little device that plugs into that factory wiring connector, and you are then able to remove the exhaust valve. I then just tied that exhaust valve wide open on the exhaust, and that led me finally back to the back part of the muffler. So what I did, I cut the end cap off of the muffler, pulled it apart, cut the baffling out, shortened the case probably 6 or 8 inches, and had that muffler welded back together. It looks completely stock, factory OEM, but of course makes a lot more noise than that factory restrictive exhaust did. So I did the most factory OEM plus exhaust that I could on the bike without making it ridiculous or having some carbon fiber can muffler hanging off the back of it. So all in all, I'm super happy with it. I saved a ton of money over buying a brand new exhaust, and it still looks OEM plus. And now a few of the other items, I did throw some frame sliders on because these things paid off massively with my 300 at the track. It hangs out wide enough that it will catch the bike on a nice low side and not cause massive fairing damage. And last but not least, I threw some swing arm spools on the back so I'm able to throw it up on the service stands and work on the bike. But other than that, it is extremely stock. Now, like I said, this originally had 1,800 miles on it, and I believe I've got around 10 or 11,000 miles on this thing now. I used to daily ride this thing as much as possible, and I absolutely loved it. But that was before I had something that I really didn't mind putting miles on, like the cheap Jeep over there. Ever since I got the Jeep, and since the whole season this sat in storage, I have really gotten out of the habit of riding the bike. Now I'm hoping now in the new big garage, I've got a lot more room and I'll be able to easily get this thing in and out of the garage. So I'm hoping once it warms up, I'll be able to start riding this thing again. Now back to that oil change. One thing that is absolutely horrible on this is the oil filter location compared to that Kawasaki Ninja 300. The 300, it was underneath, you could get hands on it. This thing, they put it at the top of the motor so it drains down all over the motor, all over the chain. And it is so recessed in there, you cannot get to it very well. I have somewhere the cup that fits over it so you can loosen it and tighten it. Of course, we can't find that today. So we got some pliers in there, we crushed the filter, we got it loose. But you still drain oil all over the bike. So I've got my 2-liter pop bottle here, and you fashion that so you can put it around the filter. And then hope to not drain oil all over the bike. But what a horrible, horrible design. They've got the newer Ninja 600s that are out, and hopefully that was addressed and changed, because this sucks. This is really, really bad. So now we're going to try to quickly pull this mess out while not getting oil everywhere and trying to clean up our mess. Now, of course, we've got our nice new Kawasaki oil filter. I'm a massive fan of doing factory oil filters on whatever it may be that I'm working on, whether it's the Camaro, the Jeep, the Mazda, whatever that vehicle is. I am typically going to the dealership of that specific vehicle and getting a factory oil filter. Now, luckily, the factory filter is already greased on the O-ring, so you don't even need to worry about doing that since they've already done that for you. So again, horrible, horrible, horrible location, but we will get it as tight as we possibly can since these things do see really high RPM. Now, like I said, they make the nice plastic and metal cups that fit over the filter, but I, of course, don't have that in hand right now. So we'll deal with what we've got. So now that we've got the oil filter on there, we're going to throw a new crush washer on the drain plug. For as cheap as they are, it's beneficial just to throw a new one on with that oil change. So guys, now that we've got the filter on, drain plug in, let's jump over to the other side, throw some oil in this thing, and finish this oil change up. So we'll get this thing filled up with oil. I personally like running the Mobile One T4 available. I like grabbing all my oil at Walmart just because it's a little bit cheaper than all the other part stores. Now, what are the plans for this thing? The bike is currently listed on Facebook. Now, I do not want to get rid of the thing, but with that Ram TRX coming up, I know I need to liquidate as much funds as I can to hopefully pay for this thing. But like I said, if this doesn't sell, I'm not going to be heartbroken at all. I've got it listed for a little bit more than it probably should be on there for, in hopes that no one buys it. But if somebody comes, throws ridiculous money at me, of course I'll sell it. But pending it doesn't sell, I'm hoping to get back on the track with this thing. I've got a really good buddy with a R6, and we have ran Hallett and Heartland Park on the bikes, and he is outrageously quicker than me, but it is still fun to go out there and play with him on track. And it would be really interesting to go back out now after tracking the Camaro so much. So guys, hopefully that gives you a little bit of backstory on the Hawaii Ninja, Hawaii 5.0, whatever we want to call it. But it's kind of a cool bike since it did come from Hawaii and spent time, you know, out there tearing around Hawaii and then ended up in a barn here in Kansas. And like I said, hopefully we'll get a little bit of time out on track with this thing. Now, I definitely do want to go to the drag strip with this. It should be the quickest thing I own, as long as I have the guts to twist that throttle as hard as I need to. I believe these things are supposed to do mid-10s or mid-11s, one or the other. I'm sure that is much quicker than I will have the guts to be able to push it down the drag strip. But like I said, it is supposed to be extremely quick with a professional rider. So it would be fun running this thing down the drag strip once we warm up and the track opens. So maybe we'll go out and do the drag strip with the thing. Like I said, I ran that little 300 a bunch at the drag strip just because you could wring it out as hard as you wanted. So guys, hopefully we will get a little bit of motorcycle content going. And once it warms up, I'll be able to start driving this thing daily a lot more on the street. So again, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.